So today is February 2nd, which means, among many, many other things, that it is Groundhog's Day. Did you wake up really early and watch the, I didn't. I don't even know. Do they, televise it? Yeah. Yeah. So, this groundhog named Punxsutawney Phil, who gets treated very, very well, I must say. And I also like this picture of, Punxsutawney Phil being held up, sort of being presented to the world. Guess what? He predicted 6 more weeks of winter. Yeah. Because I can never remember if it's because he did see or he didn't see his. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, it's such a weird, it's kind of a weird custom, right? But customs are good. And one of the customs that there's sort of a bunch of different customs that are actually really, really old. Like this groundhog thing is actually pretty old. It's sort of the American reincarnation of something that they were doing in the Middle Ages. And it's sort of about the first signs of spring, right? There's the beginning of February, everybody's looking for the first signs of spring. Everybody's really tired of the terrible January weather. And so there's this moment of spring. And February 2nd is also a really special day because it is exactly 40 days after Christmas Day. So December 25th, 40 days later is today. And you might notice, there's different customs, different ways of doing things about Christmas decorations. If you notice, some of your neighbors who celebrate Christmas, they take their decorations down on December 26th, right? Some of your neighbors wait because there's actually 12 days of Christmas. And so what we did is we took down our Christmas tree on January the 5th, which is the 12th day of Christmas, right? And then January 6th is Epiphany. And so we threw our Christmas tree out, and it's like magic. These guys come and pick up your Christmas tree and throw them away. But I've noticed that there's still some people who have Christmas decorations up. Have you noticed that? And you're wondering, are they just going to keep them up until July 4th, or are they waiting for today, which is this feast which happens 40 days after Christmas? And it's a special thing because we call it the presentation of Jesus in the temple. There was this custom in Jesus' day, and it goes back thousands and thousands of years, of taking your firstborn son to the temple in Jerusalem and presenting him to God. And it goes back to the story of Exodus, where the Israelites were in slavery and God freed them. And as a part of the covenant that God made, he said, you are going to offer your firstborn child to me, not as a sacrifice, not as, there's that other story about how the firstborn child almost got sacrificed, right? That's not how it works. And instead, actually, of that, you offer your firstborn son as a living sacrifice, as a symbol of God's faithfulness to God's people. And so that is what Mary and Joseph did with Jesus, and it happens 40 days after you're born, and so we celebrate that 40 days after December 25th. You can see on your service leaflet on the back, there's a picture. I didn't print one out because I thought I would save paper. There's this cool picture of Jesus being presented in the temple, and you can see that you got Mary and Joseph, but you also you also have 2 other people, and those are those 2 people in the story that we read about. These were people who were looking for signs of God's salvation, and it kind of reminded me of that feeling we all have of sort of looking for some sign of spring, some sign that all this dreary, terrible, cold, freezing, toe-numbing weather would be done. And these were people who were looking for God's salvation, and when Jesus showed up in the temple 40 days after he was born, they were like, that's it. That's the sign of God's salvation. And so the whole story of the gospel is kind of in this one little story, because Jesus is offered, the firstborn is offered as a symbolic sacrifice that represents God's faithfulness, that God is going to keep God's promise to God's people. And guess what? That's exactly what happens. God keeps God's promise by offering God's Son, Jesus, on the cross for everyone. And that one of those first signs of what was going, one of those first signs of the new spring of God's salvation was this moment in the temple when Simeon and Anna saw it, and they said, now I can go and I can depart in peace because I have seen God's salvation. And so we celebrate that. We look for God's salvation all around us, even as we look for those first signs of spring. And maybe the groundhog is wrong. Maybe spring will start early. Amen.